Mortal Kombat 11, one of my favorite games of 2019, no joke, especially its story mode that really changed the way I looked and perceived this game in the past. Although it's been a good chunk of weeks, even months since its release, you already know your boy Smack is a little bit late than your usual YouTuber. Why? Cause original quality content. Anyways, speaking of Mortal Kombat 11, it has such a great taste, it's just great. The characters, feels, environment, you name it, but it's story mode that's really the game changer. Don't mind critics or negative reviews, cause remember, no one cares about them reviews. Take it from a guy who's been here, following this journey for a while now. Even though I'm not a big fan, I haven't followed each and everything related to this franchise, I do have massive respect for this game, and it's just nostalgia because we used to play this a lot back in the day, talking about me and my bros. But enough of fangirling, let's talk about the game itself. Mortal Kombat 11, from the name itself, it's pretty obvious, 11th canon entry in the franchise. Its fatalities are on some bow. But we're not talking about some gameplay fatalities or difficulties, cause we're tackling my favorite part of this game, the story mode. Most specifically, one element that really stood out for me personally when I was experiencing the story mode. Sure, I could go into details for that as well, but we're talking about one element of the game that is really fascinating, and that is time, space, and universe. Now before we get into that part, let's summarize the story a little bit before we move on. Good thing about today's video is that we're only covering scientific part of this game, so really few spoilers. So, in the story mode we see Raiden, but unlike the Raiden we used to remember, he is now so-called Dark Raiden or Red Raiden, face-to-face with Shinnok in the opening scene, where we see the dark side of Raiden, and this is where things gets interesting. Raiden explains how he's going to destroy his enemies before they do and protect the Earth realm. Destroying Shinnok is one of them, and also that instead of killing him, he said, I quote, "There are fates worse than deaths," and that this is where he cuts his head and leave it nearby. But once he left, someone else makes an appearance. And guess who it is? Kara from Detroit? No, wait, that's a wrong one. They almost look the same, dang it. Kronika, who is the main antagonist in Mortal Kombat 11, as she is described as the Keeper of Time, the architect of the destiny of the universe, or most specifically, mother of Shinnok, who is the elder god of death and darkness, the one we talked about earlier. So, Kronika is already on next level. She's out of our league when it comes to one-on-one, but this is just beginning. Fast forward a little bit to a mission in one of the chapters. Cassie Cage, you already know, and Sonya Blade, joined and helped by Raiden, that happened out of nowhere, where they go on to a mission against Liu Kang and Kitana. And after spoilers alert, Sonya gives her life to help the team in the mission, where understand she could have easily been rescued, but the game plot shaking my head. Liu Kang and Kitana was approached by Kronika again, and this is where the game gets interesting, very interesting for me personally. Not that it wasn't interesting anyway, I was super into it anyway, and this was just another layer of excellence. We see Kronika using her powers, manipulating time and universe, space, and actually going back in the past and changing the course of history. That part alone was so fascinating to me because Kronika promised Liu Kang and Kitana that if they help her in the mission, she can go all the way back in time, where she can literally erase Raiden from the history, ultimately removing Raiden's existence in the current timeline of this universe. Wow. And this is where I'll stop the story and talk about this specific part. Kronika manipulating time and universe to go back in the past and changing the course of history. So it got me thinking, is it really possible? Can we actually time travel? Is there a possibility of us in real world to manipulate time? Or in short, is time travel possible? Well, let's look at the facts of science and see how it works. So for the start, let's understand what is a time travel. What do we mean by the term time travel? Well, if you take it literally, we are all time traveling as we speak. Time, let's say hours and minutes or even seconds, is like a journey, going from one place to another. That is travel. So time travel is going from 1 year to another, spending 1 hour to seconds. Every minute, every second, every year, we are time traveling. So in one way, yes, we are time traveling, but let's get to the nitty-gritty of this. Is it possible to manipulate time and go into the future in small period of time? Is it possible to go back in time? Well, let's talk about it in details. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest of all time, developed a theory that can help us in understanding this and maybe help us in getting the answer that we need. He developed a theory called special relativity, which is basically a mashup of time and space, and Einstein theorized that these both are same thing, space-time, he said. He also said that the speed limit for anything that travels through this space-time is around 300,000 kilometers per second or 186,000 miles per second, and that light always travel in that speed limit through empty space. In the same theory, it says that the time goes slower for us if our speed relative to other objects is anywhere close to the speed of light rather than people that we left behind, and also that because of this scenario, something surprising happens to us as well. The most notable part of this theory is that we won't going to notice the effect until we return to the stationary people that we left behind. So to put into perspective a real life example, and I know this example has been used by people thousands of times, but we're using it for the first time, so let's do it. Suppose you're 15 years old when you left the Earth in a spacecraft which is traveling around 99.5% of the speed of light, which is, I know, insane, but it's not impossible. It's just that we haven't reached that point yet. Anyways, in that spacecraft, you have only celebrated 5 birthdays, aka you have only spent 5 years before you get back home to Earth. Upon reaching back to Earth after 5 years, when you're 20 years old to be exact, you would find that your classmates who were also 15 years old at the time you left will not be 20 years old, but they will be 65 years old. That is a 50 years gap. What happened here? Well, the reason and explanation to this is that the time passed more slowly for us when we were in space, while on Earth they were going at the normal pace, because remember, we were going around about 99.5% of the speed of light. And because of this, ladies and gentlemen, you have successfully traveled into the future. Not just 10 years into the future, not 20, 30, or 40, but 50 years into the future in just a span of 5 years, thanks to this theory. Another reason to this, again, thanks to another Einstein theory, general relativity, which predicts that the time passes more slowly for objects in gravitational fields, such as the one we have on Earth, than for objects far from those fields, outer space. So, can we time travel into the future? Can we manipulate time and space? Absolutely. But remember, even though we haven't reached that part currently where we can actually practically do that, it is possible with current knowledge of science and space that in the near future, it'll be practical. However, in Mortal Kombat 11, one of the showcase of Kronika's main power was going back into the time, messing with the past, which begs the question, if we can go into the future, can we manipulate time and go back into the past? Well, it's a bit messy for this part. We have to understand that we are moving forward in time in only one direction because time flows in one direction. So somehow it makes sense theoretically to manipulate time and move into that one direction a little bit faster than normal speed, as we mentioned earlier. And you can achieve that if you're going anywhere close to the speed of light. But can you manipulate time to go back? Well, the idea of going back into the time past is extremely incredibly hard to explain or even think because that's just against laws of physics. However, according to some astrophysics, there is one way this could work. One way where we could mess with the black hole to move through time and space, ultimately going into the future and the past. How would that work? Well, according to the same general relativity theory, a black hole, don't make me start on what is a black hole, and no, I'm not talking about that hole, stop, could create a wormhole. Theoretically, a link between 2 points of space-time or even 2 points between different universes, making it a little bit more complicated. But the problem is that the black holes are unstable and untraversable, and we have no idea what type of result we would get by messing with one black hole itself. So anything that scientists have come up with is just a theory, because with current knowledge and technology that we have, once a spaceship enters a black hole, it is a wrap for that ship, thanks to gravity crushing that ship before it even scratches the surface part of the black hole. Ultimately, in theory, anything that touches black holes becomes one with it. But let's say it's possible to travel through a wormhole. This is where another issue is gonna come in. Paradoxical issue, to be exact. Most often known as grandfather paradox, where one would go back in time and kill their grandfather, changing the course of history and ultimately erasing their own existence from the universe, meaning that there will be no traveler to begin with, because that part then didn't happen, because we went back into the time to literally erase our existence from the universe. Then what? Or let's say if it did happen, the traveler is still existing. This is where Mortal Kombat's 11th plot comes in. After Kronika messing with time and space, we see Sonya, after giving her life and ultimately dead, she came back from the past and in the present with the present time and people. We saw 2 Johnny Cage, one from the present, the other from the past. We also see the present Raiden being erased from the history and the past Raiden being alive. This is why even theoretically it's against laws of physics, because it has to create parallel universes, and each universe would have had different time and space depending on what traveler did in that universe when they went back in time. So in theory, for the time being, it is not that possible to go back in time, although there are some studies such as Mallory's model where the idea was to create a time loop loop, so you would have future self and the present or past self appearing at the same time, creating that loop just like we see in Mortal Kombat 11, messing with black holes and wormholes, ultimately creating different universes. But even then, they have to be parallel. Is it even possible with the knowledge we have right now? Most likely not, but it is very likely that in the future, we might learn more and make it possible to not just only go into the future, but also figure out a way to deal with this and go back in the past. Maybe find some other universes. One day, my friend. One day indeed. With that being said, that'll do it for today's video. Remember, whatever I said in this video, whatever knowledge that I used in this video, the sources, I'll put all the links in the description. I had no clue what I was talking about until I started searching about it, so don't take this out of context. Don't say I'm that, oh, I'm doing this and I literally just researched this like for 2 days straight, and this is what I've come up with. So if there are any problems, there are inconsistencies, let me know all that good stuff down in the comments. Also, while you're here, watch these videos right here, which are left and right. I've worked super hard on these, so hopefully you're gonna enjoy it. Smiley face emoji, I guess. But with that being said, I'm Smack, and make sure to subscribe because I am working insanely hard on these videos. And become an official member of SmackNPie. Help us get to 15,000 subscribers, and I'll see you soon. Until then, take care and peace.